I'd been a house sitter for a while, jumping from one place to another, looking after homes while their owners were away. I've dealt with eccentricities, peculiar habits, and outlandish demands from a variety of homeowners, but nothing could prepare me for the horrors that awaited within the walls of the Collins family home. Their house, an old Victorian mansion nestled deep in the woods of Maine, was as idyllic as it was eerie. I arrived on a gloomy day, the wind howling through the skeletal trees that surrounded the mansion. Upon my arrival, Mrs. Collins, an elderly woman with sharp, scrutinizing eyes, handed me a list of rules. Glancing through them, my heart pounded in my chest like a war drum. 1. Do not, under any circumstances, go to the attic. 2. After 9 p.m., never answer the door, no matter who it seems to be. 3. Ignore any whispering voices you might hear. They can't harm you if you don't acknowledge them. 4. Never look into any mirrors in the house after midnight. The rules were bizarre, chilling, but I was desperate for the paycheck. I nodded, pretending to be unfazed. The first few days were uneventful, but on the 4th night, the knocking started. I was in the living room watching a show when it came, a soft, rhythmic tap on the front door. I looked at the clock, 9:17 p.m. My heart raced, remembering the rule. I turned up the volume, trying to drown out the noise. The knocking intensified, transforming into desperate pounding. A voice called out, sounding identical to Mrs. Collins. "Please, I forgot something, let me in!" But I remembered the rule. I didn't answer. That night I hardly slept. When I finally drifted off, I was jolted awake by a whisper right in my ear. "Why didn't you let her in?" it said. I squeezed my eyes shut, repeating the 3rd rule in my mind like a mantra. Over the next few days, the occurrences became more frequent. The whispers grew louder and the knocks more frantic. The mirror in the hallway started reflecting distorted images, not my own. On the 7th night, I broke a rule. The whispering had gotten too much. "Who are you?" I found myself asking, my voice trembling. Silence. Then, a low, guttural laugh echoed throughout the house. The temperature dropped, the lights flickered, and I felt an unseen presence, a pressure pressing against me. In my terror, I broke another rule. I ran into the nearest room, slamming the door behind me. I found myself in a dimly lit space, boxes stacked high. I was in the attic. I felt a chilling breeze and heard the soft whisper once more, now triumphant. "Welcome," it hissed. I should have followed the rules. Now, as I sit in the attic, writing this down in the dim light of my phone, I can feel them. Dozens of eyes on me, the whispers growing louder. I wish I never came here, but there's no way out now. My phone's battery is dying. The light is fading, and as I finish writing this, they're getting closer. All because I didn't follow the rules. As my trembling fingers tap out these words, the unseen entities draw nearer. The voices rise in a cacophonous symphony of whispers, their excitement palpable in the stale, frigid air of the attic. My heart is pounding so violently I fear it might burst. Suddenly the whispers cease. I hold my breath, straining my ears for any sound. The sudden silence is somehow more terrifying than the whispering voices. I feel a presence behind me, heavy and ominous. Slowly I turn around. Through the faint light of my dying phone I see them, spectral figures, faded and distorted like a bad TV signal. Their faces, if you could call them that, are blank, save for 2 piercing, gleaming eyes that stare right into my soul. The whispers resume, this time a single harmonized voice. "Why didn't you follow the rules?" they echo in a chilling chorus. I stumble back, hitting the wall behind me. Panic claws at my mind, my instincts screaming to run, but there is nowhere to go. Suddenly, I remember the phone in my hand. With a trembling finger, I dial the only number I can think of. The Collins family. The trilling sounds deafening in the deathly quiet attic. After what feels like an eternity, it's picked up. "Mrs. Collins?" I croak, my voice barely a whisper. "Oh dear," she sighs, sounding neither surprised nor worried. "You broke the rules, didn't you?" Her tone grates on my nerves, but her voice also gives me hope. "Yes," I admit, my voice quivering. "Please, tell me what to do." A sigh from the other end, then a simple instruction. "Apologize." That's it? An apology? But the desperation gnawing at me leaves no room for doubt. I turn to face the spectral figures again, their eyes blazing. Taking a deep breath, I say, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to break the rules. As the words leave my mouth, a sudden warmth envelops me. The spectral figures start to fade, their haunting eyes losing their piercing glow. The oppressive weight in the air lifts, the temperature of the room slowly returning to normal. As the last of the specters vanish, the voices fade into nothingness, leaving me alone in the quiet attic. I let out a sigh of relief, slumping to the floor. The feeling of dread is replaced by exhaustion, my adrenaline-fueled fear subsiding. It's then I decide, this is it. My last job as a house-sitter. No amount of money is worth this. Once the Collins family is back, I'm handing over their keys and never looking back. As I finally descend from the attic, the house is silent, the echoes of the haunting voices now just a memory. But the memory is enough. Enough to remind me that some rules, however strange they may seem, are there for a reason. A reason I'm no longer keen to uncover. But this was not the end. A new sound caught my attention. It was a soft, innocent giggle, like that of a child. My blood froze, my heart pounding again as the giggle echoed in the silence of the attic. The attic. The one place I was specifically warned not to enter. I had already broken that rule and apologized, but was this another consequence I had to face? The giggle echoed again, this time followed by a small voice. "You broke the rules," it chimed, sounding almost delighted. This was not a spectral figure, not a haunting whisper. This was something else, something new. A soft patter of feet approached from the darkness, and out of the gloom came a little girl, no older than 6 or 7, her hair glowing like moonlight, her eyes as deep as the night sky. She had a chilling, spectral beauty, but there was nothing friendly about her grin. "You broke the rules," she repeated, her voice echoing around the attic. "Now you have to play with me." I stared at her, my mouth dry, my mind racing for an escape. But I was trapped, stuck in an attic with a ghost child demanding a playmate. This was the consequence of my disobedience. Before I could reply, she pulled an old, faded toy from behind her back. A rag doll, its button eyes reflecting the meager light of my dying phone. "Catch!" she giggled, tossing it at me. The doll landed on my lap. The moment I touched it, I felt an icy chill run down my spine. I felt my strength drain away, my vision blur. I looked up to see the ghost child grinning, her eyes gleaming with mischief and malice. "You're it!" she giggled, before fading into nothing, leaving me alone once again. I realized then, this wasn't over. It was far from it. Breaking the rules had more consequences than I could ever have imagined, and now it was too late for regrets. The dread returned tenfold, gripping me as I sat there, the ghost child's doll in my lap. I was trapped, bound to the house with no escape in sight. The specters, the whispers, they were just the beginning. The true horror lay in the laughter of the ghost child, in the chilling game that had just begun. Days morphed into nights, nights into days. Time was a blur in the Collins mansion. The ghost child visited me regularly, always at the darkest hour, giggling as she initiated some twisted game. Hide and seek in the shadows, tag with unseen specters, each game more terrifying than the last. Each time, I felt my vitality draining away, my existence tethered to the spectral playmate and her rag doll. Fear was my constant companion, sleep a luxury I could hardly afford. The mansion was no longer just a house, it was a playground for the dead. I tried to apologize, just like I had with the specters. But the ghost child would only giggle, repeating the same words over and over. Too late, too late. On one of the endless nights, as the moon hung high in the cloudless sky, I found myself gazing at the once terror-inducing mirror in the hallway. Instead of distorted images, it now reflected the haggard, pale face staring back at me. Fear had whittled me down to a shell of my former self. As I stared at my reflection, the ghost child appeared beside me in the mirror. She was more translucent than before, her glow almost ethereal. A chill ran down my spine as I met her eyes in the mirror. They were ancient, filled with a sorrow that belied her playful demeanor. "Who are you?" I asked her, my voice a hoarse whisper. The ghost child looked up at me, her lips curving into a sad smile. "I'm Emily," she answered, her voice no longer gleeful but wistful. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "I'm lonely," she replied simply, as if that explained everything. "I want to play." It was then that I understood. Emily was trapped in this house just like I was. She was a prisoner of her own loneliness, doomed to exist in this spectral state. I can't keep doing this, Emily, I confessed, my voice cracking. I want to help you, but I can't keep playing these games. For a moment, there was silence. Emily stared at me, her eyes searching my face. Then she extended her hand, the rag doll clutched in her tiny fingers. Help me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Find my mom. At that moment, I realized what I had to do. Mrs. Collins. She knew more about the house, about Emily. She had to. I was trapped in this horrific cycle, but maybe, just maybe, I had a chance to break it. For both Emily and myself. And so, as dawn broke, casting a feeble light in the haunted mansion, I prepared myself. It was time to uncover the secrets of the Collins mansion. It was time to play the most dangerous game yet. But this time, not for terror, but for freedom. For Emily. For me. Determined, I picked up the phone, dialing Mrs. Collins. After a few rings, her voice crackled through. Yes, she answered, the surprise evident in her voice. I need to know about Emily, I said, my voice more assertive than before. There was a moment of silence on the other end. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, filled with a sorrow I hadn't heard before. Oh, Emily, she sighed. Over the next hour, she told me about Emily, her great-granddaughter who had died tragically young in the house over a century ago. Her mother, devastated by the loss, disappeared one day, never to be seen again. Ever since then, Emily had haunted the house, lost and lonely. Armed with this knowledge, I knew what I had to do. It was a long shot, but it was all I had. That night, when Emily appeared again, her rag doll in hand, I was ready. Emily, I began, I spoke with Mrs. Collins. She told me about your mother. Emily's eyes widened. Mama? She asked, a glimmer of hope in her ancient eyes. Yes, I confirmed. Emily, I think you're still here because you miss your mom. You're waiting for her, aren't you? She nodded, tears forming in her spectral eyes. I want my mama, she whispered. Gently, I held out the rag doll. I think your mom would want you to be free, Emily, I said softly. She'd want you to be happy. I wasn't sure if it would work. I was going on a hunch, a desperate attempt. But to my surprise, Emily smiled. It wasn't the mischievous grin from before, but a genuine, warm smile. She reached out, taking the rag doll from me. Thank you, she said, her voice fading along with her form. The temperature in the room slowly returned to normal, the oppressive aura lifting. As Emily disappeared, the rag doll dropped to the floor, now just an ordinary toy. With Emily's departure, the house seemed brighter, the air lighter. I finally felt like I could breathe. I felt an overwhelming relief wash over me, exhaustion pulling me into a deep sleep. I woke to the sound of the door unlocking. I opened my eyes to see Mrs. Collins standing at the doorway, a surprised smile on her face. I didn't expect you to still be here, she said, her eyes softening. Thank you. I left the Collins mansion that day, vowing never to return. I quit my job as a house sitter, choosing a peaceful, normal life over the thrill and terror of the unknown. But I often think about Emily, about the old mansion, about the strange rules. In the end, it wasn't just about obeying the rules. It was about understanding them, about empathizing with the spirits bound by them. And maybe, just maybe, helping them find their own freedom, their own peace. This was the end of my journey in the Collins mansion. It was an end filled with relief, a newfound respect for the supernatural, and a lesson I would carry for the rest of my life. Rules, however strange they might be, have reasons. Even if those reasons take you on a horrifying journey.
That's all for now. Please leave us a comment and tell us what you think. Please also like and subscribe. Thank you.